Well, hello. This is Mike Levin, and this is Swampcast. It's March 28th, and it's about 5 o'clock straight up Eastern Time. Although I think it's 2 o'clock for Jonathan Schwartz across the country in San Francisco. Hey, John, how you doing?
Good, Mike. Nice to meet with you.
Yeah, nice to meet with you too. So I've been looking forward to this. I thought, where should we begin? Maybe, for the benefit of those who don't know you very well, you could tell a little bit about yourselves, your background, and we can take it from there.
You bet. First of all, I'll warn you ahead of time. I have two small bioterrorists who live in my home. They're called my children, and they have shared whatever the latest respiratory fashion is with me. And so if I descend into a fit of coughing, that's why. I'll apologize ahead of time for being a little hoarse as well.
No problem.
I've been in the tech industry for a very long time, I think about 25 years, and I started my descent into the tech world at a startup called Lighthouse Design that built software for a little esoteric platform that now, I think about 1 billion people around the world carry with them, called Next Step, which is the foundation of iOS.
Wow.
And Apple actually has 1 billion. It just seems like everywhere you look in San Francisco, there's people with their redundant iPhones.
Right.
And then I've been around the tech industry for quite a bit. I was most recently the CEO of Sun Microsystems, and now I'm the CEO of a startup called CareZone. And in terms of family life, which is very important to what I'm doing right now, I've got 2 kids. With my wife out here in San Francisco, and between the two of us, we have 5 parents. Her parents split when they were a little younger, and so they're almost all are over 80 now, and I'm fairly typical among my peer group. That's kind of the balance. We're the sandwich generation of people who've got lots and lots of things to worry about, and that obviously is the inspiration for CareZone.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna ask you stuff that I think is interesting to me. So let's talk about Sun Microsystems. I've known lots of people that have worked for Sun Microsystems with you and heard nothing but good stuff. That you're a very good leader, technically you're very savvy, lots of cool things happen. You guys are really into deep technology, hardware, software, community, that sort of thing. I've also heard that certain things weren't exactly a cash cow. I'm very involved with Java and the Java community, and as most people know, there has been a takeover of Sun, and Oracle now owns Sun, or anyway, however that went. But I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your tenure at Sun, and particularly things about software development, programming languages, Java, Sunspot, all the geeky stuff.
Sure.
Take it, John.
So what do you want me to tell you? You have the power of the Skype having made the call.
I have the power. Okay. Okay. Well, from a developer's standpoint, I met you at a Java 1 conference, and that's kind of my, software development is my area of interest. So talk to me about Java, and talk to me about the beginnings. Maybe what was there? What were you guys messing around with before Java? Maybe C++ and.
So I came to Sun in 1996 when my startup, which is called Lighthouse Design, we built a bunch of productivity applications, which old people now know, and I know young people know them, and they sold pretty well, but it was a tiny marketplace because Next Step was such a small world. But if you looked at what it was a very flexible object-oriented platform which presumed some level of distribution. You had to kind of update and things needed to evolve over time. And so instead of being this statically compiled language, you had this dynamically assemblable world. And if you crossed your eyes in just the right way, that began to look a little bit like what Java was trying to get done.
Okay.
And that's really why we ended up at Sun, because Sun looked at us and said, hey, we're going to build a bunch of applications in the Java world. Why don't we get these guys? They actually know their stuff. They got a big library and they got a bunch of really smart people. And so we joined Sun. I joined Sun in 1996 and started working for the then chief technology officer, a man named Eric Schmidt, who later went on to really stake his claim at Novell, which of course where everybody knows him. That's a joke. Obviously now the chairman of Google, and the market at that point was booming, and it was partially because Sun was filled with such incredible people, and they had amazing momentum and amazing execution, and partially there was a really big bubble that was inflating around the world. And so in terms of the roots of Java, it was really James Gosling's genius to decide that he wanted to build a platform that in some sense was designed for everywhere else. And he wanted to do so in a way that created more freedom and opportunity. And importantly, we could make it run within a browser. And there was a little company back then that, again, only old people would know about, called Netscape. And when you could get Java running in Netscape, all of a sudden this began to look like, all right, we are now freed from the tyranny of having only one supplier of desktop computers. Now we could, we've got a whole world in this browser Java combination, and we can reinvent it from the browser out, which means we can get rid of, this monopoly that was increasingly problematic for Sun, because, we didn't worry as much about, desktops, but on the back of every desktop there's a server, and Sun made a lot of those and made a lot of money building those. And every time there was more Windows in the world on the desktop, there was, by extension, more Windows in the world on the server side, and that began to really make life difficult for Sun. So, Netscape and Java gave the company an opportunity to go after a brand new market. And then it was a network of things. It was a marketplace that existed everywhere you could see the network running. So, what were they working on before then? I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't focused on that. I was really focused on next step and trying to build a business in a really, really hard market. And then, as a part of Sun, we had a really good team, but it was a company that was not really focused on end users. It was a company really focused on developers, and to a certain extent on CIOs. And that's kind of a dangerous addiction, because CIOs are basically writing the checks for the decisions that the developers made 5 years ago. And and it was always one of my frustrations a little bit, that yes, they do produce all the revenue because developers don't have any money to spend. They just control the future. And
right.
So if you wanted to look at the seeds of Sun's future, you need only look at what developers were playing with in the mid-90s, and it wasn't Solaris and it wasn't Java. And actually it was Java and it remains Java in many ways, but the world was changing, and you wouldn't really see evidence of that change until the early 2000s, when the bubble burst, and a lot of companies said, well, okay, what do we have that's going to lower our expenses and create, new opportunities for us? And that was open source software, and that was Linux running on Intel machines, and that's what we then had to figure out a way to deal with. So I became the chief operating officer in 2006, and then took over from Scott in 2008. A year before the emergence of the world's largest financial crisis, which really lent a sense of urgency to everything we were doing. It also made a lot of things really frustrating, because all of our revenue was really tied up with a bunch of CIOs, and we were really, really working as hard as we could to try to recover the relationship with the developer community, not just by going out and being nice to them, but by delivering innovations to them that would change how they built things, because that would give us a new market opportunity down the road. And that's why we bought MySQL as an example. A huge, fabulous developer community. Again, that's owned by Oracle now, so they get to figure out how to monetize it. But back then, we had a pretty good plan for how we do it. And so that's kind of, I guess, the 17,000-foot summary of what happened at Sun, and I think they're still grappling with it. You just go look at their last financials, and you'll get a sense for how hard some of these problems were to solve, because they weren't easy. They were really hard.
So where do you see it going now?
Which? Java?
Yeah, Java and well, let's talk about the language a bit and some of the new languages that are emerging, Ruby, Scala, the functional languages, that sort of thing, and then other languages on the JVM.
So you're no sooner going to get all developers to write in one language than you will get all people on Earth to agree to speak one language. And, having just dealt with some home repair downstairs, there's no one tool for every job. And so Java was and remains a fabulous tool, but it's also, it's got its challenges. And if you are trying to do something quickly, Java is probably not the first place to start. If you're building an enterprise ERP system, Java is probably not a bad place to start. If you're going to build a phone, you're probably not going to start with Java. You're going to start with an operating system. And so again, I think it's going to figure into all the places that Oracle continues to take it. But when we built, CareZone, we're obviously writing an awful lot of a language that looks an awful lot like Java for Android devices. And we're building in, Objective-C, which again, looks a little like Java on iOS devices. But we're also still building on Rails on the server side and running on Postgres for people who are curious. And that's what gives us the maximum flexibility. So I think going forward, at least from an end user perspective, which is very different than a kind of the server-side infrastructure world, there's really kind of three horses in the race, which is not to cast aspersions on my friends at BlackBerry or Nokia or elsewhere, but iPhone and Android are obviously the big 800-pound gorillas. And the real question on smartphones is what's going to happen to the web. And it brings a tear to my eye to believe that the open platform envisioned back in the 90s is somehow being displaced by iOS and running on Dalvik. But it's very much the case today that in terms of the new users that we get at CareZone, people are going to the App Store, downloading CareZone, or they're going to go to the marketplace as soon as we ship an Android release, which is why I have this. This goes away as soon as we ship because it offends everyone.
Oh.
And so where does that leave the web? That's kind of, I don't like that answer. And so I think if I were going to look in my crystal ball out into the future, I think the web will emerge again, but it's going to have to be reborn when people recognize that app stores and having complete control of one or two companies is just bad for innovation.
Beautiful.
It limits the amount of money you can make. It limits the freedom you have. It limits, security models and privacy issues. So, but I don't see that happening this year. I mean, all the biggest, most popular sites are not websites. They may have the traffic today, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I will tell you just from my own experience, at this point, I think we're signing 5 to 6 times the number of users on iOS than we are signing up on the web.
Okay.
Why is that? It's because that's the computer you have with you.
It's easy.
Yeah, and for God's sakes, it's running NextStep. I mean, it's not like it's not an operating system. It's sophisticated than most server rooms were 10 years ago.
Well, that's super cool, and that's a great segue into my next favorite subject, is the web itself. So if we could just free associate here about some aspects of the web that I think people might be interested in your opinion on. Web 2.0, or whatever you want to call it, the interactive, the two-way web, has changed everything from the static web that first emerged when hypertext markup language was such a big deal. So, for people that aren't maybe so into technology, one thing about the web that concerns them is security. So we have all of this cloud computing and all of this e-commerce transactions going on the web. We even have digital wallets that people are beginning to use on their phones. So what are your thoughts about the future of commerce on the web and security?
Well, I used to, when I was giving speeches, I would ask people in the audience, how many of you all have done something on the web that you wouldn't want your family to know about?
Okay.
And no one would raise their hand and say,
Of course not.
I know you're out there. And now, how many of you, make prank phone calls from your cell phone? And no one would raise their hand. And it's like, well, okay, why aren't you making prank calls from your cell phone? And frankly, why aren't you doing, why do you tend not to steal music on your cell phone? And the reason was really a couple things. One, the phone was authenticated. And two, it was just really convenient to go buy music from, iTunes. And so iTunes wasn't a new security model or a new commerce model. iTunes was just easy. And so people tend to do, most good people in the world are lazy in one form or another. Lazy is just an impolite way of saying efficient. And they wanted to basically spend money in ways that were made easy for them. So today, if you look at, smartphones, you can buy an awful lot. And in fact, the numbers just came out on the scale of the App Store, and I forget what the numbers are, but they're in the billions of dollars per quarter. And, by any measure, that's big. So I think with increasing authentication and increasing innovation in the way you do things, in-app purchases are really smooth and seamless, and it's very easy, to spend money. I think the commercial opportunities are only going to grow. Realistically on the web, it's still kind of a hassle. When you're in, I'll use another good CareZone example. So we're building a service that will enable people to donate to charity through CareZone. And so the way this will work is, so you can imagine if you've ever had a family member that was in a crisis, you wanted to update your family on what was going on, probably not appropriate for Facebook, but you'd want to have a nice, little private site. You could send out a URL and you could say, all right, everybody, mom's out of surgery, here's a URL if you want to get my updates. I'm going to write them once a day so I don't have to send out email or, make a bunch of phone calls. And on the top of that, for us, you're going to be able to make a donation to charity. Now, if I do that through the Apple App Store, first of all, I'm not allowed to make donations through the App Store. If I sell you a virtual good through the App Store, I give 30% of it, 30, to Apple. That's really expensive. And so imagine I want to bump you out and send you into a browser and have you enter a credit card. No one's going to do that. That's just, or very, very few people are going to do that. Why? Because it's not convenient. And what you want to be able to do is say, would you like to give, $5 to Memorial Sloan Kettering? Yes. Done. Shows up on your phone bill.
Gotcha.
And so I think, that's obviously what Google is doing with the increasing integration of wallet. It's obviously where Apple wants to head. They have the carriers to deal with, in the interim. But that notion of making it super, super convenient to me is the number one, force that will drive increasing, transactions on the web. Security, look, I think the credit card fraud numbers are staggering. And again, I don't know exactly what they are. I just remember from my time with the credit card companies, because I used to sell to them a lot. It was measured in the single-digit percentages of all transactions. So that's just an insane amount of money that's occurring through credit card fraud. Well, that's actually harder to do on a cell phone. You're rooted in a very different way. And so I think that the fraud that already exists may go down as a percentage of total transactions. Fraud as a total may go up just because more people will be buying more things and the economies are going to grow around the world. So I think security models are only going to get better as time goes on. I think we still continue to discover every day that the weakest link in any security model is the human that is operating it. And so phishing doesn't change on a cell phone, and but there are other attacks that are getting more difficult, as these devices become more strongly authenticated and as people have more sophisticated authentication mechanisms.
Okay, all right. Another pet subject of mine is working with people in developing countries. I have some user groups that I'm familiar with in Africa, and I hope that those folks will be watching this. My question to you is, do you have some advice that you can give young aspiring developers that have worked really hard in school, and they've developed their academic skills, and they're looking to move out into the real world, and sometimes they have to struggle with some political or government-related obstacles like visas, like personal issues that like they don't have very much money, that sort of thing. But they do have some things available to them now that they didn't before, like the web and like user groups and that sort of thing. Do you have any advice for these guys?
Well, yes. You know, I've got advice for everybody. You know, I think in general the price of creating new innovations has just plummeted in the last 10 years. I mean, the price of huge amounts of computational infrastructure is, you know, at Amazon is low. The price of storage is low. The price of the software environment you'll need to build whatever you want to build is free. So there's good news there. You know, I can't help but comment on U.S. immigration policy, which from my vantage point, you know, but again, I'm out here in the Bay Area, it looks like we're trying to keep all the really smart people out. That doesn't seem like a good plan, but there's a lot of folks, myself included, who are trying to do what we can to change that policy so that we can allow more smart people in and then try to keep them here. So I think, you know, there's going to continue to be opportunities everywhere. You know, the reason why so many great companies come from the Bay Area is because we try a lot. But we also fail. I think we have more companies that fail than anywhere on earth in the Bay Area. And why? Because that's, you know, you have to try, and try doesn't mean you instantly succeed. It means you try. So I guess my advice would be to anyone around the world: you're never going to succeed if you don't try. I think at least in the Bay Area, if you try and fail, that doesn't make you less valuable. You know, I don't know of anyone who looks at a resume and says, you know, oh my God, this person has 3 startups to his name and they all failed. Let's not talk to him. They think, oh wow, I wonder what he learned. Yeah. You know, I wonder what he built with and why they made the choices they did. And wow, it really shows a lot of initiative. And that is maybe unique to the Bay Area, but you know, but I think there's an increasing recognition around the world that really good, clever people can make a huge amount of difference. And, you know, we're looking for them every day. I'm sure every other employer is looking for them as well.
Okay. All right. And what would you say to business owners and managers and hiring people that would be looking to work with people in developing countries? And the reason I say that is because I've been trying very hard myself to get work for these guys. And sometimes these guys in developing countries that I know and work with, I know that they're first grade, they're top-notch developers. They're just looking for an opportunity. Because of the disparity between the dollar and some other currencies, it can be very economical to do that sort of work. So what would you say to maybe encourage business owners to give it a shot and give these guys a break?
Well, so right now at CareZone we have employees in San Francisco, Seattle, Milwaukee, Belarus. We're talking to a bunch of developers right now in New Zealand. I mean, I want to hire smart people, and their zip code is secondary.
Right.
I think there was a memo sent out by Marissa Mayer recently saying that everybody has to go to their office in San Jose or Cupertino, wherever it is. And I just thought, I mean, that is so the opposite of the way the world works. You know, by definition, the number of smart people in your zip code is less than the number of smart people across the world. And so I guess as a business owner who practices this, look for smart people. And you may not like to work the way that they work, but then again, you may not have their job, and you may not be, you know, you may not have the insights they have. I mean, our developer from Belarus just came out and spent some time with us, and it was really fascinating listening to him talk to us about, you know, the Belarusian economy and the internet habits of, you know, of folks he lives with and his family members, and it's just a totally different perspective. And it was great because like a whole bunch of his ideas are now melding their way into our mainstream products. And that doesn't happen if all you do is hire people who live in and around Cupertino. You just get the Cupertino mindset, and you know that may not necessarily change the world everywhere else in the world.
Right. Okay. And I suppose working with people in New Zealand and in Belarus, and you're managing them to some extent, You have some logistical problems that you have to overcome, but
Yeah,
you managed to do that.
yeah. I know. The good news is all places in the world have time zones. The bad news is they're not all the same time zone. And I wish we could do in many ways what China did, which is let's have one time zone. Let's just focus on this time. So that we have stand up every day at 11:30
Okay.
and 11:45. So everybody, independent of their time zone, goes to the central meeting place. They're on the screen. Everybody's standing up saying, "Here's what I'm going to do today." So the culture of the company is we're a very chatty company, as you might imagine. We have a very chatty CEO,
Right.
and we talk a lot about what's going on. And that, but all that said, that's not the only way we manage things. There's developer processes. Everything we do is in the cloud somewhere. So we're just highly connected. But we would be connected if we were on 4 floors of an office building. The one thing we can't do is we can't all sit around the table and, have lunch and chat about the future. So we do that rarely, as opposed to, every day. We have the virtual equivalent of that every Thursday. In fact, today I was disinvited from lunch because today is developer lunch.
Okay.
And I don't do that. But so yeah, I think there's opportunity in smart people. So I would focus first on smart people, and then secondly on their zip code.
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah, I know. I've got some friends that work for Ubuntu, Canonical, and
Yeah.
they seem to have a great time. They are extremely talented, and they are extremely distributed. But
Right.
they manage to get together every so often. It very often happens to be beautiful places, and
Right.
but they're efficient and they get the job done. And Ubuntu is looked upon as a very good product.
Yeah, you bet.
So. What about CareZone? Why don't you spend a little time on what you're doing right now beyond what you've said, and get some people excited about that?
You bet. So, as a parent, a little over 10 years ago, Sophie and I had the same challenge that every parent across the world has, which is not changing diapers. We all do that. It was, where do we put all this information that we're, assembling? And everything from, the social security number and his blood type to just important facts to keep around, the developmental history. When did this happen? When did that happen? How is this evolving? So there's this kind of stream of information that you want to put somewhere. Now, where do you put it? You can put it on your Facebook page. That would be stupid. You could stick it in Google Drive somewhere, and we certainly did that along with email. But that's not really tailor-made for what I wanted, which was a safe place to care for somebody, where you would go to the site or download the app, and you would identify, who are you caring for? I'm going to care for my child. Here's his name. And now I've got a little account, and it's already organized for me. It's kind of divided up into little sections, so I have a place to upload files, a place to keep notes, a place to keep contacts, a journal to write in, a set of to-dos, a calendar so I can remember when his next appointment is. And these were all things that were about him. And as soon as I had that, then I could say, share with Sophie. And then Sophie has the identical account. And so when she changes the number of the babysitter, or the address of his clinic changes, we both see it instantaneously. And then over time, my parents decided to get old one day, and if you've ever been in a position of having to worry about your parents, it's a lot of work as well. And so now, as I said, between Sophie and me, we've got 5 parents, 4 of them are over 80. And okay, where do you get their information? Their social security number, Medicare number, name of and phone number of the neighbor who comes to help pick Dad up if he falls down. The schedule of things that are associated with him, and how do I share those with maybe somebody who stops in on him to help fill his pill box? Where do I list his medication so that when I take him to the dentist and the dentist says, what meds is he on? And he says, I don't remember. I've got the list. It's on my phone. So CareZone is really fundamentally a safe place to care for a family member. And increasingly, you're going to see that become not only more relevant to your life because it's on your phone. So again, if you have an iOS device, you can go to the App Store and download CareZone, or you just go to the website and you can register for an account. It's a freemium product, so you can freely manage however many people you want. Next year, we're going to be introducing some premium services, so they give you extra storage, for example, or enhanced communication tools. And it was designed to give you basically a private social network that was built around not you. It was built around somebody you're caring for.
Right. Well, that's pretty interesting. Would there ever be a case that you would want to share your family's CareZone with me in terms of maybe events or photographs or more social open things?
So for the most part, I think that happens in Facebook, and and I guess we look at Facebook as where you manage your social life, LinkedIn is where you manage your professional life, and CareZone is where you manage your family life.
Ooh, beautiful.
And my family, I have a brother who lives in Florida, and he uses CareZone with his family. I share my dad's account with him, and why? Because we're a family.
Right.
And the stuff that goes into his journal is not something I would put anywhere other than where it is.
Got it.
And similarly, we're continuing to evolve the product and figuring out new and different ways to go address needs. But given that it's a freemium product, I have an account set up for my dog, who's lying right over there. Why? Because he has a vet and he had medications and there's just a bunch of issues, and I share it with his dog walker, and she rarely uses it, but every once in a while she house sits. And so, it's just a good private utility for the people and the beings that you're caring for. And every one of us around the world, the good news about families is it's the world's oldest social network. They exist everywhere on Earth. Everyone on Earth has parents. So we're never going to run out of market opportunity. And many people in the world have children. All people in the world worry about their children and worry about the information associated with their children being let out onto a place where they don't want it let out, and we just give them an alternative.
Fantastic. I love it. I can't wait to download it and try it.
There you go.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs, say from developing countries, that would help them be a little bit more successful? Maybe in terms of their own business plan, involving other people that have money or not, bootstrapping it themselves, sweat equity, some of those topics.
So when we founded Lighthouse, and this is back in '89, no one would fund us. No one in their right mind would give a bunch of 26-year-olds any amount of money. And this was kind of before the big blossoming venture community, and simultaneously, we had no business plan. We were a bunch of people sitting around saying, "I wonder what we could do that would really matter." And at the end of the day, the most important thing we did is we started.
Okay.
The second most important thing we did is we changed our mind about what we were going to build based on the success we were seeing. We were not being very successful, so we had to swap our perspective on what we wanted to build. And then thirdly, we just found the path to revenue, and then we iterated and iterated and iterated. So if I could find one customer that wanted to buy what I wanted, I could then pattern match to go find all customers that looked like that one customer.
Perfect.
So whether you're in Silicon Valley or Austin, Texas, or Bangalore or Madagascar, it doesn't matter. What matters is, I guess, a couple things. One, that you try, and you don't have to spend your life savings trying. Again, technology has become so efficient and so inexpensive. You can get out there and make big things happen with a very small amount of money. Secondly, I guess that the one piece of advice I would give is solve a problem you have.
Okay.
And because you really want to be the master of the domain. You want to understand what it is that you're solving. And so if your life is all about network switching, go build the world's greatest network switch. If your life is all about, wanting to hook up with other people like you, go do that. I often come back to, markets are made, they're not measured. Measuring a market is the after effect of someone having created it. And the example is, if you asked Gartner before the internet happened, how big would the internet be? They'd say, well, we have no way of knowing. It's not interesting to us. We're going to go back and measure the market for ERP applications. And so when you're going to envision a new world, you have to invent it. And you can't start from the outset and say, how big is the market, and use that necessarily as a litmus test for how much effort you want to put into it. Because remember, Nokia and Motorola and others had the smartphone market locked up before Apple redefined the marketplace.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
And similarly, the market didn't exist before Mark Andreessen, built Netscape into what it was. So you've really got to look at solving a problem that you know and that you experience and you feel, and then you got to try. And again, word of mouth is so powerful on the web. The ease with which you can get information from one place to another. Where things happen doesn't matter nearly as much as that may happen. So if they're going to happen in Belarus or in Beijing, fabulous. Doesn't matter. I mean, there's a lot more, I think, analysis you have to do if you're trying to solve the Madagascarian, problem, and all you want to do is solve the problem for Madagascar. You do have some level of market limit that you have to worry about.
Right.
But similarly, I have that same, market limit right now with CareZone. It's English and Spanish only.
Okay.
Well, we want to change that. Why? Because I don't think I'm going to be able to penetrate China with a Spanish product.
Right.
So.
Okay, I get it. So what would you say, and this is a leading question, to people that say, do what you love and the money will follow?
I can only tell you my personal experiences, which is that's exactly what's happened.
Okay.
Because again, when I left, so I started my career at McKinsey & Company, which is a very fancy place, and they pay well, and it's a great job. It's a great bunch of people, very smart. I'm not sure I loved it. So I quit my job, moved into a house with a bunch of scruffy, engineers, and we ate beans and rice and got things wrong for about a year and a half.
Okay.
But there wasn't a single day that I woke up thinking, I hate my job.
Right.
And I loved it, every minute of it. And so I just think there's a lot to loving what you do. You're more productive, you're smarter, you're healthier, you're more creative, you're better to work around. In my current job, every day I hear from users who say, you just made a difference in my life here. So I love what I do. I mean, I do it probably 24 hours a day, because I dream at night about the ways we could change our delivery model, which is a sad commentary on me. But and you obviously have some of the same, because I don't think you'd be sitting there with a bicycle in your room if you didn't love what you were doing. So I'm a huge believer in it. I also believe, look, I mean, we see both ends of the spectrum at CareZone. We see folks who create accounts for 90-year-olds with end-stage Parkinson's and dementia and have all kinds of horrible problems. And then we see moms taking care of newborns.
Okay.
And when you see that every day, you really understand there's bookends in your life.
Right.
One on the left, which is the day you're born.
Oh, yeah.
The day you die. So fill up those books in between.
Yeah.
Details you can, because that's what life is all about.
And not about empty six-packs. Yeah, that's what a friend of mine who just passed away used to refer to books that you've already read that you keep on a shelf. He called those empty six-packs. Pass them on, get them out there. So what about a revenue model? I mean, there are lots of startups that they're doing what they love, and I have a couple of ideas that I would love to implement, but I've only got a frail, shaky little business model. That revenue model, like Facebook is talking about advertising. What about people that have a great idea, but they don't really have a revenue model for it?
So I think any great idea that attracts a lot of people, by definition, has a revenue model.
Perfect.
And so I think the most important thing is that you focus on solving a problem that a lot of people experience.
Right.
Not that you start with the world's most clever business plan. I mean, business plans are great the day you write them, and the day after they're worthless.
Okay.
I remember when Twitter first came out, I remember this interview so clearly. And it was probably in the first year or two of its existence, and some journalist was saying, what a joke. I mean, what has the internet become? We're all like, swapping 140 character messages. And I said, I know an awful lot of people who are starting to think that this is changing their life, because they can get a lot of things done they weren't able to do before.
Right.
And And they're still a private company, but they're really valuable. And they're valuable because so many people can be accessed and influenced and reached and communicated with. And when you have that scale of an audience, business models, you can pick them. I was reading this morning about the emergence of kind of next generation messaging platforms, and the most popular, that's out there, WhatsApp, is $1 to download. And they still had, I think it was 110, 120 million downloads last year. That's a lot of bling, So, but it's the best app out there, so that's what everybody gets.
Cool. Okay. What do you think about the tipping point? That is everybody's nirvana. You may have the greatest app, you may have the greatest idea, it may not be an app, it may be a network switch or a hub or something like that. But the tipping point, and I know you've experienced a bit of that in your career, what are some hints and tips about how to do that?
I think the most important ingredient to a tipping point is tenacity.
Okay.
Because they don't happen instantly, and sometimes they take a really long time.
Okay. Yeah.
There are ample examples of companies that were going nowhere, and all of a sudden they hit it.
Right.
They hit the right, delivery model, product model, business model, and everything just flowed.
Yeah.
But you don't get to experience that if you don't keep on trying.
Okay. Well, have you got any parting comments? I want to keep this within a reasonable time frame, and maybe we can talk again.
Sure. I guess it seems like it's a consistent theme for you that there are folks who are around the world who have great opportunities in front of them, and they just got to go find them. Right. I guess I would moderate that message a little bit, which is, you don't find opportunities necessarily when you're looking for them. You find them when you're making them. Okay. And it's easy for me to say in the Bay Area and with access to all the resources I could possibly need, that you have to go make your own opportunities. But there was a point when I graduated from college, I had a huge amount of debt. I could barely see straight. I owed so much money to so many people. And I still started a company with a bunch of friends who also had the same. And that's why, I think our only expense back then was rent, because we all lived in the same house.
Right.
And we made our own opportunity. It wasn't made for us. No government gave us a grant. No, VC splashed a bunch of money in front of us. We just went off and did what we thought we could do.
And you ate a lot of beans and rice, right?
A lot of beans and rice. And I'm really thankful for that experience, because it really just gets to, it's all about self-sufficiency. There is a market out there. There will be a market that's bigger next year than there was this year. The global economy will only grow in our lifetimes, as will the population. So, there's lots of change and lots of opportunity for the people who go decide they want to go make it happen.
Well, that's super cool. Well, you really hit on a chord with me there. For a long time, I used to take my kids out in my VW camper van, and rather than going nuts in the house, and we'd park by a lake and we'd cook ramen noodles, and I'd let them chop up all the vegetables. And if I had known about beans and rice, then that would have been what we were eating.
Right.
What's your favorite food of that nature? I mean, do you like beans and rice?
Oh, I cook a lot, so I love food, and I live in the greatest place in the world for food, because I grow so much of my own. Yeah. But I don't know, I have a hard time thinking of my...
Okay, not the superlative, but okay, what's your favorite beans and rice recipe?
I think my favorite beans and rice recipe is actually hummus, which is you just take a can of garbanzo beans, put it in a processor with some olive oil and salt and lemon, and you're off to the races.
Okay. Cool.
Really nourishing, really good for you, really easy to make, and very affordable.
Yeah. I'm with you. Chickpeas are just amazing. I think, personally, lentils are the solution to world hunger. Yeah, they're amazing. Hey, listen, it has been great talking with you. This is one of my favorites so far. And this is also the first video Swampcast that we've ever done, so keep your fingers crossed.
Good. I'll look into it. Thanks, Mike, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I hope we can do it again.
Good. I look forward to it.
See you later.
Bye, Michael.
Bye.